With the HD remaster of Croc Legend of the Gobbos fast approaching, I thought I'd play through the PS1 version of this game because, well, I haven't played this since it first came out in 1997. I'm so old. So let's boot this puppy up and see how it holds up and what needs to be improved for that HD remaster to be successful. Originally releasing back in 1997 for the PS1, Sega Saturn and Windows, Croc tells a tale of a little green crocodile who was saved by the leader of the Gobbos, King Rufus. Rufus? Rufus? I don't know. The king first comes across Croc as a little baby when he's mysteriously sent down a river in a woven basket. Nothing like a healthy serving of child abandonment for a kid's game. The king and the other Gobbos decide to raise Croc as their own, and boy oh boy, you can bet your ass they're glad they did that, because this evil magician Baron Dante and his followers invade Gobbo Valley. Baron starts capturing Gobbos, locking them up in cages, and just really becomes a big old meanie. Croc manages to escape with the help of a magical figure named Beanie, and now it's up to Croc to go around the many locations offered in this game to free the Gobbos, save the king, and to stop Baron Dante. Now it's no coincidence that Croc looks so much like Yoshi, as Argonaut actually had a fairly significant relationship with Nintendo. Argonaut Software previously worked with Nintendo, creating a processing chip for the SNES that allowed the display of 3D polygonal environments. Argonaut Software pitched the idea of a 3D platformer using Yoshi as the main character. The creator of Argonaut games, Jez San, said this: "We mocked up a prototype using Yoshi. It was essentially the world's first 3D platform game and was obviously a big risk. Nintendo had never let an outside company use their characters before, and weren't about to either. This is the moment the deal fell apart." So with Nintendo clearly being protective over its characters, this left Argonaut in a precarious situation. Obviously feeling like they were sitting on something great here, they left to retool and create their own IP, and this is where Croc was born, and then abandoned and shoved down a river. Don't think about it too much, it's just a kid's game. Now luckily they did repurpose their ideas, because Croc would go on to be one of the biggest successes for the studio, and because they own the IP, it was also one of the biggest financial successes, selling over 3 million copies for the PlayStation alone. To put that into perspective, this put Croc in almost the top 30 highest selling PlayStation 1 games, beating out other titans like Driver 2, Silent Hill, Parappa the Rapper, and Tekken, so this was quite an achievement. History lesson out of the way, how does the game actually play? For a game that came out almost 30 years ago, it's actually exceptional. I've tackled a few games from my childhood on my channel, and I'm finding that fairly often, the games just don't hold up to today. Croc, not without its issues, actually holds up fairly well, and with a HD remaster on the way that looks to tackle the problems I'm gonna raise in a second, it's only made me more excited. This game gives players slightly over 40 levels that are spread across 4 main islands and a 5th secret island if you manage to collect all 8 jigsaw pieces. Or if you know the cheat code. The gameplay in levels remain fairly consistent, as Croc doesn't really gain new abilities, but the levels themselves change so much and are constantly combining new and interesting obstacles that the variety comes from those shifts. Each main island will have its own themes such as grass areas, ice, desert, lava, etc. And all of these will provide environmental challenges as well as new enemy types. On top of navigating your way through shifting environments and enemy types, each level also has a range of collectibles to search for too. You can search for the Gobbos that have been captured. You'll also need to collect these white crystals that act as Croc's health. They basically act as the sonic rings, so as long as you have at least one on you, you will not die when an enemy hits you. You'll also be on the lookout for these colored crystals that open up corresponding doors for more challenges and access to a hidden 6th Gobbo for that level. There are hearts, keys, puzzle pieces to find, and many boxes to move and smash. You can also decide to hit the gong at the end of the level and quickly move on to the next stage, or if you want to go even deeper and get even more out of the game, you can do the collectibles to be taken to a hidden or locked areas away through these doors. It's actually really impressive just how much is hidden away in this game and how much choice is given to the player. It certainly advocates for multiple playthroughs. Now, it's not all sunshines and colored crystals. There are some very specific things that detract from what would otherwise be one of the strongest platformers from the 90s. Given this is a platformer, controls do need to be extremely tight. Unfortunately, that's not the case here. We are spoiled for choice these days when it comes to platformers that showcase great controls. However, back in the day, all of that was still being figured out. Unfortunately, as the 3D platformers were extremely new, there were some very noticeable teething issues. Croc has what we call tank controls. So instead of pushing up to make your character go forward and then pressing back and having the character instantly turn around, you can think of Croc more like a tank. He will effectively start backing that badonkadonk up and reverse when you push down. Pivoting on the spot feels really janky, requiring you to stand completely still, or if you want to turn, you have to turn by running in a large arc, which is really not good in situations where you need to be really precise in a small area or quickly avoiding oncoming enemy attacks. Mix this with a fairly unforgiving camera, there were just many moments that led to high frustration and unfair deaths. Croc really isn't an overly challenging game, but most of the difficulty and the frustration came from this janky control scheme and the camera. There were several moments in my play that I could clearly see how to get to a certain area or how to obtain a certain item, but I really could not be bothered with the controls. I looked at the situation and I go, these controls would be horrible for that, and skip over that entire section. It was just not worth it for me. There were also other moments where Croc would just not grab onto a platform, or would quickly grab onto a platform and let go, causing me to fall to my death. And there were also moments where Croc would slowly fall to the edge of the platform because you try to reposition him on a platform that's moving, as well as seeing where your next jump is. Combating that and the camera while on a moving platform made some situations really difficult to navigate. The hitboxes in this game are also pretty miserable. It's very hard to judge how close you can get to an enemy before it registers as a hit on you. As you could imagine, the issues with the controls were really emphasized in enclosed areas through the more complex platforming seen in those later levels. Earlier levels, because they're quite easy and they're quite open, were actually fine. And also, as he controls this poorly on land, you can only imagine how poor the controls are in water. Ugh. Now, Croc has a variety of moves available to not only help you with the platforming, but also navigate these challenges and help you reveal those collectibles. He has a ground pound for smashing boxes and cracked flooring. He has a tail whip to get rid of enemies. He's also able to push boxes into position for better platforming. He can climb certain walls to get to higher vantage points, and he has probably the most useless and slow strafing I've ever seen in a game. But what else is there outside of the platforming and collectibles? Well, Baron Dante goes around turning creatures into these mini bosses that you'll need to fight. There are a couple of these per each island. They're mostly easy enough, and they sport that usual trope of 3 hits before dying. Nothing too crazy, but provided a nice contrast to the platforming to change up the gameplay. Simplicity aside, I wish they just had a little bit more feedback when you landed a hit on them. There were a couple of bosses where I stopped what I was doing simply because it was barely visible that my attacks were even registering or connecting with that boss. I thought it wasn't working, so I would go away and try something else. I kept attacking the boss, hoping it would work, and on several occasions, I just became surprised the boss just died, not even knowing that my efforts were actually making a difference. Having a bit more of a visual feedback through more elaborate animations or even an auditory cue would have been extremely helpful here. Now, for those of you who don't know, Argonaut Software, now Argonaut Games, is working on a HD remaster. Along with updated textures and graphics, the remaster addresses the thing that was holding this game back: its controls. It will provide purists with the options to still use the tank controls, and it will also have the option for smooth, modern, analog controls with an improved camera. This is fantastic to hear, as it really felt like the controls and the camera significantly held this game back. And these 2 points, being the camera and the controls, were also the 2 largest points of contention when this game was originally released as well. With these 2 major concerns out of the way, we can play Croc in the way that he was meant to be played, where the challenge comes from the levels and enemies themselves rather than struggling against an uncooperative camera and stiff character controls. Other improvements I'd like to see in the remake would be a counter or some kind of information about how many of the collectibles you've obtained when you hover over each level in the overworld. Just something cute like, you've collected 3 out of 5 colored crystals. It'd be great for completionists. It will provide immediate feedback to players looking to go back and replay certain levels, and it also generally informs players about how well they did in that level. As it currently stands, I have no idea how well I did in these levels, nor what levels I need to go back to 100% in order to unlock secret levels or endings. So not without its issues, Croc Legends of the Gobbos holds an incredibly special place in my heart and history as a gamer for more than 30 years on this planet. It was one of the first games that I played and really thoroughly enjoyed. Revisiting it now has highlighted its shortcomings, yes, but also reaffirmed to me that with a few tweaks and adjustments, it could easily reach its full potential, appealing to both returning fans and a new generation of players.